Woke to the smell of disinfectant and the sound of shuffle-footed footsteps in a hallway I didn't recognize. The ceiling was white acoustic tile with water stains. Not my ceiling. Mine had a crack that looked like the Mississippi River. Grace always said it gave the room character. I sat up slowly. Everything worked. No pain, no confusion, just cottonmouth from sleeping too long. The room had 2 beds, mine and another occupied by a man folding and unfolding a washcloth, over and over, like he'd been doing it for hours. Where am I? My voice came out rough. A woman in scrubs appeared, young, professionally cheerful, the kind of smile that never reaches the eyes. Mr. Henderson, you're awake. How are you feeling? Confused. Where is this? Sunnybrook Memory Care. You've been here 3 days now. 3 days. I touched my face, felt stubble I didn't remember growing. 3 days of my life just gone. I didn't check myself in. Your son Derek handled everything. You had an episode, remember? Dr. Caldwell said you needed monitoring for your safety. Some of you already know what it feels like when trust turns into silence. The nurse, Ashley, according to her name tag, checked her tablet. Your son visits this afternoon. He's been so worried about you. I'd raised Derek alone after his mother died. 16 years of being both parents. Now he was handling arrangements like I was furniture. I found the bathroom mirror. 72 years old, but my eyes were clear, hands steady. I'd managed my life fine until 3 days ago. Not the face of someone who needed memory care. I tried to remember. Tuesday I helped Ruth move a bookshelf. We had coffee, normal things. After that, nothing. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, gone. The bathroom lock didn't work. Dummy lock, maybe normal, or maybe designed to look normal. I thought about Derek's last visit. He'd seemed different. Kept asking about my health, medications, whether I felt confused. At the time, it felt like concern. Now, it felt like someone building a case. Dr. Caldwell appeared in the activities room. Gray hair, expensive glasses, white coat. Everything calculated to inspire confidence. Mr. Henderson, how are we feeling today? We. Like I was a child. According to him, I'd called Derek 17 times in one night. Claimed people were breaking in. Couldn't remember Melissa's name. Classic cognitive decline. I don't call anyone 17 times. And I've never forgotten my daughter-in-law's name. His smile was rehearsed. Memory issues presented as denial, he explained. Derek made the difficult but correct decision. When I asked about my lawyer, Dr. Caldwell was evasive. Treatment first. They'd started medications. I hadn't needed medications until that moment. That's when I realized Wednesday wasn't missing. It was taken. The activities room had a phone mounted on the wall, but it required a 4-digit code to make outside calls. When I asked Ashley for the code, she gave me that practiced smile again. All calls have to be supervised for safety reasons, Mr. Henderson. We can arrange that for you. Who did you want to call? My lawyer. Something flickered behind her eyes. Too fast to read. Let me check with Dr. Caldwell about that. She never came back. I asked to speak with Ruth, my neighbor of 23 years. The woman who'd brought me casseroles every week after Grace died, who watered my tomatoes when I went to visit Derek last summer. Visitors needed to be approved by family first, Ashley explained. For my protection, family meant Derek. During lunch, bland chicken, overcooked vegetables, apple juice in a plastic cup, I found myself sitting next to other residents. Most were genuinely impaired, lost somewhere in the corridors of their own fading mind. They ate mechanically, stared at walls, responded to questions with empty smiles, but some seemed surprisingly alert, present, like they were pretending to be more confused than they actually were, or had been confused and were starting to clear up. A woman named Carol, maybe 70, watched me with sharp eyes while she picked at her food. First week is always the hardest, she said quietly. You're the math teacher, right? I heard the nurses talking. 38 years at Lincoln High. You? Social worker. Retired 8 years ago. She glanced around, making sure nobody was listening. I've been here 8 months now. My daughter said I couldn't live alone anymore. Said I was a danger to myself. Were you? I fell. Once. Tripped over my garden hose and sprained my wrist. Had it in a brace for 2 weeks. She lowered her voice even more. 3 weeks later, I was here. Same doctor handled everything. Dr. Caldwell. Very understanding about families who need help with difficult decisions. The way she said understanding made my skin crawl. Did your daughter handle the paperwork? Carol nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving mine. Had power of attorney signed before I even knew what was happening. My house sold 6 months ago. Henderson Family Trust bought it. That name, Henderson. That can't be a coincidence. It's not. She paused, looked over her shoulder, then leaned even closer. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. There are 4 of us here with the same story. Different family members, different situations, same doctor, same trust buying up our properties. She leaned even closer. William, 2 rooms down. His nephew put him here. Margaret in the West Wing, her stepson. All of them suddenly had episodes that required immediate placement. All of them had houses that sold within weeks to the same trust. Did anyone report this? To who? We're the ones who supposedly can't think straight. Our own families signed the papers. The doctor says we're confused. Her voice carried a bitterness I understood completely. By the time anyone listens, everything's already gone. Something cold settled in the pit of my stomach, but I wasn't ready to name it yet. Wasn't ready to believe my own son could be part of something like this. That single detail changed everything. I started learning the rules of my new prison quickly. Meals at specific times, no exceptions. Medications twice daily, delivered by nurses who watched to make sure you swallowed. Activities scheduled throughout the day. Puzzles, card games, group exercises that consisted of lifting your arms over your head 3 times. Lights out at 9 o'clock sharp. The medications made me sleepy, foggy around the edges, but not confused. My mind was still sharp underneath the chemical haze. Whatever Dr. Caldwell had prescribed, it was designed to keep me compliant, not to treat any actual condition. I started pretending to take the pills, tucked them under my tongue, smiled at the nurse, then spit them out when she left, flushed them down the toilet, and watched them swirl away. By day 3 without medication, my mind felt sharper than it had since arriving, clearer, more able to see the shape of what was happening to me. Derek visited Thursday afternoon. He looked different. Tan, rested, expensive haircut, new watch. Maybe he'd been taking time off work to handle this. Maybe he was just stressed. I wanted to believe that. When I said I didn't belong here, he brought up the 17 phone calls again. The confusion, the behavior I supposedly didn't remember. But when I pressed for specifics, Derek, have I ever called you 17 times about anything? Ever? His answers became vague. You don't remember, Dad. You had an episode. Dr. Caldwell documented everything. I asked about Wednesday, the gap in my memory. He said I'd had a severe episode, became combative, tried to leave in my pajamas. That's when he'd called Dr. Caldwell, who recommended immediate placement for my safety. He was looking at his phone while he said it. Not at me. Maybe he was just uncomfortable. Sons don't like seeing their fathers like this. Or maybe the paperwork wasn't about care. It was about timing. Ruth came Friday morning, and I could have cried with relief when I saw her face in the visiting room doorway. She'd told the staff she was my sister. Bold-faced lie, but apparently effective. Eugene, what in the hell's going on? Straight to the point. That was Ruth. I told her everything. The gap in my memory. Dr. Caldwell's vague accusations, Derek's new watch and practiced answers, the dummy lock on the bathroom, the phone that required a code I wasn't allowed to have. Ruth listened with the intensity of someone who'd spent 30 years as a nurse, who knew the difference between genuine medical need and something else entirely. Then she told me what I'd been dreading to hear. Derek came to my house on Wednesday, said you'd had a stroke and were being moved to assisted living, that you'd asked him to handle everything, that it was all very sudden but necessary. Ruth, I didn't have a stroke. I know, because I saw you Wednesday morning around 9 o'clock. You were in your garden, perfectly normal, annoyed about your tomatoes not getting enough water. We talked about the weather for 10 minutes. You were sharp as ever. What happened after that? Her face hardened. Wednesday afternoon, around 2 o'clock, I saw Derek at your house. He had Melissa with him, and another man I didn't recognize. Younger, suit and tie, carrying one of those leather document folders. They were there for 3 hours, Eugene, going through your house, taking papers, loading boxes into Derek's truck. Derek had keys. Of course he had keys. I'd given them to him years ago for emergencies, in case something happened and he needed to get in. This was his emergency, not mine. Ruth, I need you to do something. Go to my house. You still have the spare key I gave you, right? She nodded. Go inside. Look around. Tell me what's different. When she left, promising to come back the next day, I sat in the activities room and tried to piece together what must have happened on Wednesday. Derek with paperwork, official documents, Dr. Caldwell signing off on something. Me, probably drugged or sedated, something that would explain the gap in my memory, brought here while they rearranged my entire life. The question wasn't what had happened anymore. The question was why. What could Derek possibly gain from putting his own father in memory care? I didn't know it yet, but by the time Ruth returned, the answer would destroy whatever was left of our relationship. Ruth returned Saturday with a folder and fury in her eyes. "Eugene, I went through your mail." She pulled out a real estate flyer. "My house, sold," stamped across the top in red. 2 days ago, Thursday. Buyer, Henderson Family Trust. A trust I'd never created. I stared at the address. My address. The house where Grace and I had raised Derek, where I'd measured his height on the kitchen door frame every birthday, where I'd fixed the porch swing the summer he turned 12. Gone. Sold. While I sat here eating bland chicken and pretending to take medications. There's more. She showed me a bank statement. My $89,000 in savings, 38 years of teaching, now showed $847. I looked at the withdrawal dates, March 15th, April 2nd, May 18th. While I was still living in my house, someone had been slowly draining my accounts. Someone with access I'd never authorized. Systematic transfers over 6 months. Small amounts first, then larger. Testing to see if I'd notice. Then accelerating when I didn't. All authorized by power of attorney. I'd never given anyone power of attorney. "Ruth, call James Morrison, my lawyer. Tell him I'm being held against my will. My assets are being stolen." She studied my face. "Eugene, are you certain? Test me. Ask anything." For 10 minutes, she quizzed me. Math, history, names, dates. I answered everything correctly. Ruth's face changed from skepticism to fury. "Then we need to get you out of here," she said. "James." Morrison came Monday, posing as a family friend. "Eugene, this is sophisticated elder fraud. Derek filed emergency guardianship based on Dr. Caldwell's evaluation. Full hearing in 3 weeks." He spread documents. "The power of attorney looks legitimate. Dated 6 months ago, notarized. Do you recognize these witness signatures?" I studied them. Margaret Chen, Robert Williams. Never seen them. "Good. I'll have an expert analyze your signature. If it's forged, that's fraud. But legally, Derek has authority until we prove otherwise." Morrison lowered his voice. "Dr. Caldwell has been investigated twice before. Unnecessary commitments. Families benefiting financially. Cases dropped. How? Money. Pressure. Most elderly victims don't have resources to fight back. But I do. You have me. I'm arranging an independent evaluation with Dr. Rebecca Torres, neuropsychologist, specializes in elder abuse cases. If she confirms you're competent, we can challenge everything." "How long? Weeks? Maybe months?" "Derek's been careful. Every document looks legal." After Morrison left, I walked the halls, observing staff rotations, security, locked doors. If I was going to fight this, I needed to understand what I was up against. Dr. Rebecca Torres came Wednesday. Different from every doctor here. She actually listened. "Mr. Henderson, I'm going to ask questions. No rush. Take your time. For 2 hours, comprehensive cognitive testing, memory spanning decades, math problems, current events, personal history. Tell me about your work. High school mathematics, 38 years at Lincoln High, 1983 to 2021. Algebra, geometry, trigonometry, coached math team 15 years. Today's date, current events," I answered correctly, then described politics, weather, baseball standings, news. "Walk me through a typical day before Sunnybrook." I described my routine: coffee, newspaper, breakfast, morning walk, shopping Tuesdays and Fridays, bills first of the month, helping Ruth, baseball, bed by 10, boring, predictable, stable. Dr. Torres closed her notebook. "Mr. Henderson, your cognitive scores are exceptional, 95th percentile for your age. You show 0 signs of dementia, confusion, or any condition. Justifying involuntary commitment." Relief washed over me. "Then why am I here?" "That," Dr. Torres said, her voice hard, "is exactly what I intend to find out." Thursday afternoon, Derek came with Melissa. First time she'd visited since I'd been committed. She'd always been good at this. The concerned daughter-in-law routine, touching my arm, asking how I was feeling, saying how worried they'd been. I decided to test something. "Melissa, I'm having trouble remembering some things. Remind me where you and Derek are living now? I can't quite picture it." Derek jumped in before she could answer. We told you, Dad, we're renting a place downtown while we look for something permanent. Remember? Downtown is expensive. We're managing. Quick answer. Too quick. Melissa shot Derek a look. Fast, but I caught it. Actually, I said, keeping my tone casual, I'm curious about something else. Derek, when exactly did I give you power of attorney? I'm a little fuzzy on the timeline. Another look passed between them. This one longer. 6 months ago, Dad. You were worried about your health. Wanted to make sure someone could help with decisions if something happened. That's interesting, because I don't remember being worried about my health. I don't remember signing any documents. And I definitely don't remember authorizing you to access my bank accounts. Derek's face went red, the way it used to when he was a teenager and got caught in a lie. Dad, that's exactly the kind of memory problem Dr. Caldwell documented. You don't remember things clearly. That's why you're here. You forgot who raised you. The words came out quiet, but they landed like a slap. The room went completely silent. Derek stood up abruptly, nearly knocking over his chair. We should go. You need your rest. As they walked toward the door, I heard Melissa hiss at Derek in the hallway. Not quite quiet enough. You said he'd be more confused by now. The medications should be working. Better. Working to do what exactly? Make me compliant? Make me forget? Make me unable to fight back? Dr. Torres's evaluation triggered an emergency hearing. I sat in a wheelchair while Morrison presented our case to Judge Patricia Williams. Your Honor, Mr. Henderson shows zero cognitive impairment. The power of attorney appears forged. His assets have been drained. Derek's lawyer argued I was manipulative. Dr. Torres took the stand. Mr. Henderson scored 94 out of 100, 95th percentile, perfect recall. Zero signs of dementia. In my professional opinion, this man has been fraudulently institutionalized. Judge Williams turned to Dr. Caldwell. Doctor, on what evidence did you recommend memory care? The family reported confusion. Did you personally observe this? No, but did you perform comprehensive testing? Long pause. The family consultation indicated, that's a no. Judge Williams's voice was ice. You committed a man based on family reports. Without verification, without testing. She turned to Derek. Where's your father's house? Sold to cover care expenses. Sold to whom? A family trust. Did your father authorize this? Silence. Your father scored 94 out of 100 yesterday. I'm looking at 89,000 withdrawn. His house sold without his knowledge. You're saying he authorized this while being too impaired to live alone. More silence. Mr. Eugene Henderson is immediately released. Guardianship dissolved. All transactions suspended. I'm referring this to the district attorney. Elder abuse, fraud, unlawful imprisonment, bail $50,000 each. Derek went pale. The bailiff unlocked my restraints. For the first time in 2 weeks, I stood on my own. I didn't win by yelling. I won by staying clear-headed. Outside, Morrison shook my hand. House sale can be reversed. Bank accounts unfrozen. And Derek? Up to the DA. Document everything. I thought about Derek at 8, crying when his mother died. I'd kept my promise for 44 years. He'd repaid it by trying to steal my life. Ruth picked me up. As we drove past Sunnybrook, under investigation, admission suspended. Eugene, what now? Now I go home and I make sure this never happens to anyone else. Derek and Melissa were arrested 3 weeks later. Elder abuse, fraud, forgery. Dr. Caldwell lost his license. I testified at their trial. Looked Derek in the eyes. Derek got 8 years. Melissa got 10. I got my life back. I kept living in my house. Ruth and I looked out for each other. She watered my tomatoes. I helped with her taxes. Every month, Derek sent letters, excuses, apologies, medical bills, debt. I never opened them. Box in the garage. Maybe someday. Not today. The Henderson Family Trust was real now, legitimate, with oversight. When I die, every penny goes to protecting vulnerable seniors from exactly what was done to me. Derek gets nothing. Not out of spite, but because I finally learned the difference between enabling and love. I thought about the other Sunnybrook residents. Carol, who lost her house after one fall. William, Margaret, the others whose families made the same difficult decisions. Carol got her house back too. Last I heard, she'd moved 2 states away from her daughter. Started fresh at 71. Sometimes I get postcards, short messages, still standing. What happened to me wasn't unique. That was the scariest part. This was a system. Dr. Caldwell, the trust, the paperwork, a blueprint for how to legally steal from your own family while making them look incompetent. How many others were there? How many didn't have a Ruth next door, or a Morrison who'd take the case, or a Dr. Torres willing to tell the truth? How many woke up confused in places they never agreed to, watching their lives get dismantled while being told it was for their own good? How many are still there? No regrets about fighting back. Most people my age don't talk about this, but we should. Some people say family should always come first. Others say self-respect comes first. I know where I stand now. I'm curious where you stand.